Hi, welcome to the show,
Hi.
Clifton.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
Cliff Manning, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you about Get Friday and some of the benefits that I have gleaned from working with your company.
Thank you. Thank you. So, welcome to the Project Virtual Assistance Videocast show with GetFriday. Today, we have a special guest with us, Clifton Manning from Philadelphia, from Pennsylvania. Sorry, from
Pennsylvania, yes.
Pennsylvania. Why don't you introduce and tell us a little about yourself, Clifton?
Sure. So my name is Cliff Manning. I'll tell you. I break it up in segments for you. So
Yeah.
by day, I work as a administrative director for radiology at Newark Beth Israel Hospital. That is a hospital that is located in the heart of Newark, New Jersey, serving that community, the underserved. But it's serving it with a high level of quality and great leadership. I'm very fortunate to be a part of that team. I do in radiology. I have 5 departments, or actually 6 departments that are under me, all having to do with imaging, everything from MRI to CAT scan to X-ray. That's what I do by day. What I do by night, or my passion is writing, and it's public speaking, and is really helping others, whether it be my day job or even or my passion is really to help people to discover the things that make them unique, and to find a way to bring it to some form that can help someone else. And so, I'm working on my book that is called Dream Octane. It's 7 steps to discover, develop, and deliver your niche. And I'm hoping, I just signed with an editor, I'm hoping to have it out by February of 2021. So I'm
Wow.
excited about everything that's happening. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible, and I'm happy to hear you are one of the clients. We have had very many clients of Get Friday who have written books and become incredibly successful, like Tim Ferriss. I
All
hope you
right.
also become as successful
Hey,
as him.
I would love to be in that company, and I'll receive that. I'll take that. Thank you.
Yeah. And as such, in a time of COVID, it's very difficult to handle a day job like what you're doing as a radiologist, administrative head of a radiology department in a hospital where there is so much happening. So how do you manage a night job or night passion or hobby as well? So how do you juggle these two things? I think it's incredible. Do you have that double the energy to work?
Well, I drink a lot of green tea, and I just try to stay as
Okay.
active as possible. I also
Okay.
have a 4-year-old who
Oh,
keeps me on
okay.
my toes, and a
Okay.
15-year-old who
Okay.
also demands, along with a wife. So
Yeah.
there are a multitude of things going on. But to answer your question, for me, I think, if you can carve out time, if you can identify first, what exactly are you passionate about? What are you good at? What is it that you can bring as an offer to the world that's unique to you but valuable to someone else? I think if you can find that, then what you have to offer doesn't just become a gift; it becomes a responsibility. And so, with that vantage point, I find that it's important to you have to make the time. Actually, you just have to make the time, and it's a balancing act. And I'm not going, by any stretch of the imagination, make anyone feel that, yeah, I have everything under control. But I can tell you with 100% certainty that each day I try to incrementally move towards the goals that I have set. And that's for my day job as well as for my outside job. But I think the short version of how to answer that question is, I just try to replace TV time with productive time.
Okay.
So
Okay.
so it's instead of just kind of sitting on the couch and just vegging out all the time. I mean, every once in a while you want to just kind of decompress, that's fine. But under normal circumstances, again, I try to have every day. And I'm sure someone who has gone through I've seen your LinkedIn entrepreneurial, you have your own entrepreneurial fervor about you. You've had high level of learning, so I know what it feels like and what you need to do as far as prioritizing getting things done. And it's the same mindset.
I think all of us have the same amount of time. It's just how you use it productively that matters,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, yeah. So
It
how
is
did
so
this,
true.
yeah, so how did this idea of virtual assistants germinate in your mind, and what attracted you to Get Friday, or how did you get started with it?
So this kind of ties into your first question somewhat. I knew what my capacity was, but I also knew what my end result was, what it needed to be, and I saw that there was a gap between the two, and as a result, I really got the idea from reading Tim Ferriss's book, The 4 Hour Work Week, and
Okay,
I've read that a couple of times, and I actually started. I didn't start out with Get Friday. I went to Your Man in India. So
right.
YMII.
Yeah.
Yes, and they then referred me to Get Friday. So that's really how I started. My goal of getting a virtual assistant was really an intent on seeing how can I accelerate creating content and getting content out there that I could package as offers to give to people.
Okay. So, incidentally, this just as you were inspired by Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week, Tim himself was inspired by an article written by a guy called A.J. Jacobs, Esquire editor, who all started this with trying to say, why should only Fortune 500s use remote assistance or work? Why can't an individual do it? And way back in 2005, he wrote a very humorous article in the Esquire magazine, which became very popular. That's how Get Friday itself was born. So Tim
Mm,
Ferriss read that article, was inspired, and of course he had other inspirations as well. But each person gets inspired by the other and goes on to achieve a lot of things. So I'm really excited to learn about your book. So tell us a little more about your book, and what exactly drove you towards that particular subject of discovering your niche, and helping others also discover, so that they can fulfill their entire potential or their latent potential. So what led you towards that path? Because these are two very divergent things: radiology and then your other hobby. So they are poles
right.
apart. So how did you marry them both?
You know what? That is an excellent, excellent question. And I'll answer it this way by telling you a little bit about myself. I started my career as a per diem X-ray tech. I graduated at the time, this was about 20 years ago, from a community college with my degree in X-ray. And so as I was working, 2 years into doing that, I was given an opportunity to be promoted to supervisor. 2 years into that, I was given an opportunity to be promoted to the acting administrator, and then I eventually became the site manager, and then from there I left, became the assistant director, a director for another hospital, executive director, and then from there there was the company that I was working with got into a fight or just squabble or technical
Okay.
issues with the company that we were working for, and it was like a bad marriage. They separated. I took a management position because I wanted to stay at that place. Eventually got promoted to director, and then I relocated to, or got this opportunity that I'm currently in right now. During this whole journey, 17 of the 20 years, I felt almost unqualified for the positions. Although the journey had so many different levels of promotions. I mean, if you look at the trajectory that I was on, I've been like, it's going straight up to you. I feel
Absolutely,
you can see it
absolutely.
going towards the top. And but then I find myself, the one sitting at the table having to make decisions with high level individuals, everything from doctors to other people with high level degrees. Now I have my master's now, but at the time I felt unqualified, and so I had to either A, accept the fact that that was a reality, or B, say, okay, I may not have the degree that you have, but I have something working for me. And what that is, I'm gonna work as hard as I possibly can to get as much information as I can. I started reading every leadership book that I can get my hands on. I started going to seminars wherever they came into my area. I saw people like, Zig Ziglar before he passed away, at Colin Powell speak, and, many other speakers go up there. And it inspired me to say, you know what? I can do this. And then after a while of getting all this information, over time, people start to come to you and ask you questions, and you become like the expert in the room. So now I'm in a room with doctors and nurses and people with these advanced degrees, yet they're asking me for advice because I've found myself just constantly feasting on great ideas from great thinkers, and it starts to shape you over time. And so that then, the way the book came out of that was me starting to mentor people. And whether it be like when I was in an executive director position, I had to bring on people who would work under me, but I had to teach them how to think like a leader. And in that process, I found that the best way to do it was not to make them like me, but to bring out the best in them. And so I would find something that they did really, really well. And then I would just build off of it. And I don't know if you watch, if you're a big basketball person, but, the Michael Jordan and, Kobe Bryant, they have one common denominator, and that's Phil Jackson. And Phil Jackson was the type of coach in basketball. He said, you don't have to do everything, but what I ask you to do is do that one thing and do that one thing really well. So you have Dennis Rodman that just grab rebounds. Michael Jordan, you're the scorer. Scottie Pippen, you're defense. Just do that. Do that really well, and we will win games. And I started leading that way, and from there, the book was born. So Dream Octane really came out of that process of helping people, or trying to help people to develop, but to develop in a way that's unique to them.
Okay.
So that's the backstory.
Okay, that's very very interesting, and how you related it to various things, including sport. And I think even at the workplace, we think a lot of people can just do well merely by skills and the education that they receive. But I think a very important component is also the mentoring, the
Yeah,
hand holding that you do to help them guide in terms of developing as a leader. So not
mhm,
everybody is a leader. They may have skill sets, but to become a leader, you need to be inspired and you need to have others who are mentoring you to become better and being able to lead people. So I think that's incredible, and I think you are making a great difference in a field that is very very super critical at this point of time,
yeah,
especially with the healthcare sector taking the entire brunt of the COVID crisis. So
yeah,
big hats off to all the medical professionals and to you too.
yeah, definitely. Thank you
Yeah,
so
yeah,
much.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next question, I wanted to understand how you started using GetFriday. For what kind of tasks have you used GetFriday, and what has been your experience with virtual assistants per se?
Yeah. So Get Friday was my very first experience, my own personal experience with virtual assistants. And the reason that I went to Get Friday is that I there's two opportunities that I see happening right now, and I'm sure you would agree. And that's in moving business online, that currently is not online. And the second thing is content creation. The two kind of go hand in hand with each other. And I understood that in order for me to go online and become relevant online, I had to start creating content. And so, the company that, I started just scouring the internet to see what I can find to do online. And I was that guy that you would go on to YouTube, and every ad that would come up to say, hey, you can sell this, and click here. That's me clicking, click, 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 click. And, obviously not everything. I didn't do everything, but I at least gave a listening ear, and I said, oh, that's not me. That's not me. That's not me. But I found one company that called ClickFunnels, and they have a funnel and a training and everything. And I found what most was interesting was a lot of the big names, the Tony Robbins, the Dean DeGracio, these individuals, they were actually using this engine to help drive their products.
Yeah.
And then as long story short, I wound up signing up for them. I started going through training with them, and I learned the value of content creation, and not only creating content, but being able to create it in a very accelerated way. And that's why I turned to Get Friday. And my very first project was looking for someone who could help me convert podcasts into blogs, and then from there help me to go and grab influencers and do different tasks like that, that during my day job, as you know, is already full. I can't do that in the day,
Absolutely.
but because of the time zones, I'm Get Friday helps me to almost work almost around the clock, not at least 16 hours of the day there's something happening, so
Yeah.
either I'm doing it or Get Friday can do it for me, so
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah. In fact, this was the very same sentiment that a client that I interviewed about a fortnight back for the same video cast, a guy who's a veteran in the solar energy industry, told me that I'm getting a 24-hour workday without me actually working the 24
That's
hours. So
true.
that's the power of using virtual assistants or taking some extra help. I mean, you could possibly do everything yourself, and you're probably the best person to do it, but it just doesn't make sense for you to handle everything. So it
Yeah.
makes sense to prioritize, identify what is that you should be doing and what is that somebody else can do it, even if it is at 80% efficiency or whatever it is. But things will get done, and you will definitely see a huge productivity in your life, in whether it's in your career or in your personal life. That's
Yeah.
what we are trying to push out here. So, in relation to the same question, the next thing was: is it actually difficult to work with an assistant who is 10,000 miles away? We are in India, you are there in the US, and remote relationships are pretty difficult. And
Yeah.
add to that the complexity of cultural differences and the context being different. Still, we have had thousands of clients every year use our services and be happy with it. So it requires, I wouldn't take the credit for the successful relationship solely to Get Friday, because it requires two hands to clap, and it requires the client
Hmm.
also to make a change in their working style to be able to fit into a virtual assistance kind of scenario. So, what do you think are those changes, and how successful have you been at doing it?
Um, it's a great question. Is it challenging? I think it's challenging because it's new, not because it's difficult. And I think once you understand, this new frame that you're working within, after you adjust to it, I don't think it's difficult at all. And again, I think it's just learning the nuances of working with someone in this way. It's obviously it's a lot different. On my day job, I can walk across the hall and go see the individual, and ask, and we may have same cultural backgrounds to the point that you're making.
Yeah.
But I haven't found that the cultural differences have been any barriers whatsoever. If anything, I think it provides a vantage point. I'll tell you one quick story that's relating
Sure.
to Get
Sure.
Friday. What was an epiphany for me was the way I signed up with Get Friday was with a challenge. So from the time that I started with Get Friday, I said, all right, working with Faisal, who was the person who was, like, I guess, the broker to find us. I don't know what you term them as, but like your manager. He and I started interacting, and I said, well, I'm looking for an assistant. Here is what I propose. I would love to have 3 people work on the project as an interview. And I says if they can each write how to believe it was how to discover and monetize your niche. I believe that was the assignment. And this was just I really wanted to see if people had if the assistance they were going to give me had the writing ability that I knew I needed for my future. So Pfizer did an excellent job. They got me 3 candidates, got me the resumes. I reviewed them all. We gave them the assignment. We gave them a time frame. We says, okay, we have 1 week, write a 1,000 word essay on how to find and monetize your niche, right?
Okay. Okay.
And so they did that.
Okay.
Within 2 days, Joseph, who's my assistant now,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
within 2 days, Joseph sent me back a report, and I says, if honestly, if I wasn't the one who thought of this just completely out of the blue assignment, I would have thought that he picked it up somewhere. Like
Okay.
if I would have asked him,
Yeah.
give me a writing sample, I would have thought he got it from somewhere. That's how well written it was.
Okay. Okay.
And that project then became, once Joseph was selected, everybody, the rest of assistants were great too. It was such a hard decision. But that his first assignment after we went through that process of me selecting him was to take those three and to now consolidate all three assignments and make one. And that one assignment now is an ebook that will be offered to clients to help them find and monetize their niche.
Wow.
It's now, it turned in from 1,000, so that was 3,000 words between three people. It's now, I believe it's like a 30-40 page document
Wow.
that we have.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so that I did not imagine would happen working with virtual assistant, but having someone who's working incredibly hard, like someone like Joseph, to just try to meet you or exceed your expectations. This is what happens. That's the product that we end up with.
Right. 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 So, in terms of the virtual way of working, do you think COVID has changed the mindset of people, and people are more open to now virtual teams, remote working, and stuff like that? Is there a permanent change that you think is happening around the world, which probably was only a small segment of people who were willing to explore pre-COVID? What do you think is happening around the world right now?
That is another great question. I think what we're experiencing, I think what COVID is doing is just causing a paradigm shift. I think it
Yeah,
really is shifting everybody into not even a new normal. It's shifting us into a new reality,
yeah,
and it's not going to be the same the way it was. I don't think it's ever going back. I don't think companies are ever going to go back to everybody needs to be in the office again. I think even after vaccines,
yeah.
because there are going to be some benefits and some efficiencies that they're going to glean now, and they're going to start to say, hey, wait a minute, why weren't we doing this all the time?
Yeah,
A quick example from even like in healthcare, um, telemedicine was every once in a while you may have one or two people using it. Now telemedicine is being used quite frequently. Now there's a benefit because you want to maintain social distancing and you want to screen people, but it's not as is 100% more prevalent and pervasive than it was prior to COVID. So what is COVID doing now? It definitely is forcing people to do things that maybe only the early adopters would have done before, the innovators would have done before. Now it's forcing everybody to say, no, you have to do this, otherwise you won't survive.
yeah. And I think, like, for instance, the New York and New Jersey region suffered a lot of losses during the peak COVID time, and I think the healthcare sector there had a lot of experience, the doctors, the nurses, and other healthcare professionals. And when the same problem percolates to other parts of the country, there is a lot of learning that can be taken from a region that has already undergone the whole exercise, and maybe prevent deaths, and maybe improve the quality of healthcare. So I think this thing of knowledge sharing, telemedicine, and remote work is going to stay permanent. It's going to be a permanent fixture for the future. Of course, there are benefits to working in an office environment, because certain things like innovation, teamwork may function better in a face-to-face environment. But still, I don't think there is a necessity for us to bring the entire workforce all at the same time to offices anymore. I think that's a
Yeah,
big paradigm shift, and anybody who is becoming a master of how to manage things online is going to be reaping the benefits of it, which is
yeah,
what you are trying to do in terms of trying to help people find their niche, and then improve themselves and achieve what they want to achieve. Right.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah. So Tell me, how do you go about this exercise of finding your niche? Assume that I'm a complete lay person. I don't understand anything of it. But what are the steps, and how do you go about it in a very clinical manner, if I should say?
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, so I try to keep it as simple as possible. My question that I would ask is, simple. Like, what are your passions? Some examples that you may have from times past, things that if you would do it if no one paid you, you would do it, and you would do it wholeheartedly and put a lot of effort behind it. That's question number one. Question number two is, what are you proficient at? What actually are you good at that other people may come to you as an expert? I find that quite often people who may be good at something, they oftentimes don't really hold that in high regard, because it comes easy to them,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so that's important. The third thing is, what problems are you good at? This is a somewhat different side. It's a different side of almost the same coin of like what your proficiencies are. But what problems do you solve? What do people come to you and basically need your input on in order to get over some hurdle, go through some barrier, or to make something a little bit more efficient? Like, so, your problem solving. The thing is, the other things are so you have your passions, you have your proficiencies, you have your problem solvings, and you also have what patterns do you have in your past that you can see, when I do X, Y tends to be a successful outcome. It's looking back at some other part, something unrelated to what you're going through, and being able to say, wait a minute, anytime that I actually can get a group of people together, somehow we're able to get from point A to point B. And every time I'm in these type of situations, it tends to be successful, even if it's not 100%, but at least most times
right,
it tends to be successful if you put
right,
your mind towards it. So
right.
that, in a simple sense, that is what finding one's passion will be. So I actually created what's called the what I call the Dream Octane niche finder framework. And it's a very simple spread. It's a very simple sheet. It asks those questions and a few others. And what you would do is each one of those questions. So you say, okay, what's your passion? You put your passion down, whatever that activity is, and then you give it a score. You score it from 1 to 5, 5 being, what you feel to be a very strong trait, and 1 being the least, not as strong. And then you ask a family member, and then you ask a trusted friend or mentor to also score. Now, by the time you get down the sheet, each, your passion, you may have 3, your problem solving, you may have 3, your, when you go down, and then you just you add up everything, and then you see which one stands out, which one has the highest number out of all of them. Zig Ziglar has a great quote that says, do you want to be a wandering generality, or do you want to become a meaningful specific? And so when it comes down to finding your niche, it really is helping people to put energy behind that big number, and accelerate in the area, or focus their attention on, maybe it's that high school person going into college. They can focus on, wait a minute, you know what? I'm actually really good at math and science. Maybe I want to consider biology or medicine, right? And so, like, I think if you can find your niche now, by looking at what you have done well in the past, it will give you a better guiding principle for your future. So that's pretty much how it all comes together.
Okay. So I'm being reminded of a similar concept called the Johari window, which is basically four
Okay.
windows where there are things that you know and others also know that you know. Then there are things that you know but others don't know that you have that skill or whatever is the talent. Then there are things that you don't know but others know that you possess that skill. And the fourth one is things that you don't know, neither do other people know of it, but you do possess it. So you actually get a
Mhm.
group of people talking and try to identify and put things into each of these windows, and it is a self discovery process where you
Mm.
identify things that you didn't know about yourself. So it is more of a self discovery process, though you do it as a group, and it actually feels like you are trying to share thoughts about others, but in fact it is a journey of self discovery. So very interesting that
Mm.
whatever you talked about. And so how important are influencers to this whole process of self discovery? Does it mean anything to have those influencers? Or I mean, each person is discovering his own self. So why have influencers at all?
Well, I think influencers
Yeah.
are important for two reasons. One, if they have influence, that means that they either they one of the four or five things that we just talked about. They're either very passionate about it, they're very good at it, or they solve somebody's problem with whatever they're doing. So they're putting on display their niche, and for those that are in their sphere of influence, or in their tribe, if you would. Seth Godin calls it the tribe. Whoever following them, they're attracted to something about them. And so influence are important for one, because they are able to display something that they have not only discovered, but as I say in the book, they developed it, and now they're delivering it. I take a commercial break on this real quick. I find that many of the books that I've read, I found that they may be proficient at telling you how to discover your niche or gift or talent, develop it, or they may have ways of delivering it. But I think Dream Octane, what I find is unique about it, is that it brings all three together. It's like the continuum of just getting it out and bringing it into what I call the engine of change.
Right, right.
And so that's one. And then the second part of it is that influencers, as you start to interact with them, and if you interface with an influencer, and even if it's a podcast, if it's a blog, if it's just interacting with them, they then bring you into their sphere of influence. Right. And so that's also important. Again, if you're trying to help people and you're trying to get the word out, you can go and speak to followers, which there's nothing wrong with that. Or you can speak to leaders who then carry your message to their followers. And it's just the law of multiplication. I mean, it's just so much easier to multiply than to add. And the best way to do that is to contact the influencer.
Yeah, and I also think it's kind of a proof of concept that following something has worked, and it has
Mm.
worked for somebody who's incredibly or fairly successful. And there is no reason why you shouldn't be trying it, right? So there is a point of reference when you look at influencer, that this person has tried these techniques or whatever is a methodology or a path, and has been successful. So that helps others also to sort of not get waylaid into too many things, but trying to discover what they should be focusing on. So I think the role
Yeah.
of influencers is quite important in this way. So my last question, I think we are definitely going beyond the timeline, but my last question to
Okay.
you is, what is your message to people, since you are trying to help them discover their niche? What is your message in today's trying times, after we have seen something that probably generations haven't seen in their lifetime? So what is your message to people, if there is one?
Well, it's two things that I would say and like to leave people with or encourage them with. I think the first thing is I have a mantra of the three G's, as I put it. The first thing is you want to give God, thanks for His grace. You want to be grateful for what you have, and I think you want to be intentional in giving what you have to offer. Those three things I think are very important. And then the last thing that I think is important to also let people know is that, if innovative change is an engine, then your unique dream could be its fuel. And
Oh,
so if you can find your dream, and which is your niche, and you plug it in and you take that unique ability and you plug it into an engine of change, something special can happen. And so that's what my mission is, and that's what I'm looking to do. And hopefully, as I offer this to people, they can discover, develop, and deliver their niche in their sphere of influence.
And that's where the name Octane comes from.
Yes, sir. Dream Octane, because your gift is the fuel.
Absolutely. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to have you.